They says that when the gulping god first saw these realms, he was struck by a hunger so deep he flooded them with his drool. When that spittle formed the seas, the first of us ogres sailed out the briny depths on carracks of bone with sails of beast hide. Others say our forebears ate their way from out the frozen heart of Mount Alvagar. The winter bringer had no use for 'em if they weren't strong. Lots of stories, all fit for the cave flame. Truth is, I don't care. I don't care one meaty gobbet for any of it. Ogres is ogres, see? We're bigger than you and stronger than you, which means we can do whatever we like. If we're scowling, that's bad news. If you're catching us grinning at you, that's worse. What really makes an ogre is having eyes as big as your gut. If we see somewhere that we want to go, then we go there. And if we see something we want to take, we take it. And I want to take it all. The greenies smashed this place up. The big lads tried to stomp it flat, and the thinlings mucked it up with all their guff. All the while, our chiefs lay about, counting their coins, or fought other folk wars for scraps, forgetting that ogres was meant to take, not be given stuff. But them times is done. Now it's our turn. We ogres who never forgot what we were. The meat priests scream about feeding the realms in their slobbering god, and the hunters want to cast it all back to the ice that we're covered from. But me, I just want everything to be mine. I'm an ogre, so what I want's, I get. Welcome to the garage, you tools. For the next 2 hours or thereabouts, we're going to do our best to keep you informed, entertained, and have a few laughs along the way. Bringing you ogre history, ogre theology, and actual named unique characters for the first time in over a decade. I'm Dave Witek. I'm running solo today, folks, as you're listening to Garage Hammer TV or Garage Hammer the podcast, depending on what you're listening to currently. But I'm here, and I got my notes, and I got my book, and I am super ready to dive into this amazing book, the Ogre book. What can I say about it? It has really... it is great. It has fleshed out an army that for years I've thought of as bigger than orcs and dumber than orcs. Just big, beefy brutes that are just doing beefy brute things. And this book makes them so much more. They have finally been brought into the Age of Sigmar. They have purpose and ideas and all that stuff. And I personally am super excited. I am super excited to bring this to you. So before we do that, let me do the things we need to do, which is thank the sponsors and stuff like that. So I do want to thank all of our sponsors. That includes Chaos Orc Superstore, Chaos Orc Superstore, Chaos Orc Superstore, 6 Squared Studios for all your basing, MDF, 3D printing needs, as well as their big, huge gaming community Mecha Games. That's 6, the number 6, the word squared, studios.ca. And of course, Grognard Games in Algonquin, Batavia, and Roselle, Illinois, because there's always something happening at Grognard's. That's right. And our newest affiliate, Element Games, elementgames.co.uk. Check them out. All of my European listeners, check them out. You can use the link in the show notes or in the YouTube channel description. Hey, use that link. You save yourself some money, and it helps out the show. So any of those guys, if you can help them out, check them out. That would be fantastic. Yeah. So let's move on. Let's also thank the Patreon patrons, okay? Patreon patrons. That includes our executive producers, Kyle Leaf and Ricky Sean, our associate producers, Big Jake, and we have a bunch of free patrons jumping on recently. I'm trying to put some more stuff there. I'm trying to get things going there. like I said, the YouTube's happening. There's a lot of things going on. So thank you to all of the Patreon patrons, every last one of you. You're the guys that keep this show going, and I just want you to know how much we appreciate that. Chris appreciates it too, even if he's not here. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about. All right, what else? Okay, voicemail. We do have voicemail, although I'm still having trouble getting the voicemail up and going. I think I got the last one ready. We had some weird issues. You heard the sound issues last time and was trouble bringing them in. Once I get that figured out, we will play the voicemails. But if you want to leave a voicemail, you can call 1-757-GH-SHOW-6. That's right, that's 1-757-GH-SHOW-6. You call that number and you leave a voicemail, and then we usually play it. When there's not technical difficulties. But we do that. And most international callers dial 00 and then 1-757-GH-SHOW-6. That's what you need to do. That's great. That's everything. That's our intro. That's everything that's going on. No toolbox today, although you can see behind me I have hobby projects galore. Oh, check it. I did pick up the ogres. I went to Grognard's and bought the set. I did not get anything in advance for this, and that's fine. I didn't even get the book, though, which is why all this stuff is late. But I got the ogres built, and I got them zenithalled, and I'm pretty pleased with that. Oh, while I was at Gen Con, I was doing a little painting class, and I was learning to paint this owl bear. It's kind of cool. Dude, I don't know if you can see anything really well with the camera. I'm just shoving stuff up at the camera because I have a camera for the first time in forever. For the first time in forever. That's like Disney. Yeah, so this is my little hobby corner in the basement. It needs some rework. I got books. I got stuff. You can kind of see what's going on back here. Until I get the actual hobby studio recording set up. Oh, if you guys saw this is just duct tape and bubble gum right here. I am hoping you guys are watching this and liking it. I am very nervous. But here's what we're going to do, folks. We got to take our first break. Gotta run the silly commercials. We're going to take our first quick break, and then when we come back, we are going to dive into this book because I have read it, and let me tell you something. This book is sweet. The artwork, fantastic. The new models, spectacular. Making ogres seem more like dumb. Honestly, they just gave them nothing. They didn't have a named character. Think about that. They did not have one unique named character. Is there another army that doesn't have one? I don't know that there is. I think orcs have something. Even the Sons of Behemoth got something going on, right? So just seriously, we're going to get into it, but this is a huge jump. This is a huge boost, and I think you're going to see and be pleasantly surprised by what you see with all of these, all of this new ogre lore, because it's really fascinating. And when we get back, we're going to jump right into it. We are back. Hey, everybody. Time to talk ogres. Ogor Mawtribes. First of all, right, lads, who's hungry? That's just fantastic. First, we're going to beat them. Then we're going to eat them. This book. It's not out for a month unless you buy the big set. And I promised my daughter that we would get it. So I bought the big... Oh, the nice thing. Hold on. I'm not a fan of the cards. I ain't going to lie. But they've got the spearhead rules in here too. So like you've got the cards for your spearhead, the rules and the spearhead cards, which I do like because these I will use for Wargaming Club like 100%. I know we're not doing a toolbox, but I actually had people over this weekend. We played a bunch of Blood Bowl. We're going to do a small, short episode on that. And I also taught Brandon and Bianca's friend Francis how to play Spearhead. Francis hasn't played any Warhammer since first or second edition, and it was more watching other people play. Brandon hasn't played since second edition. By turn two, they knew what they were doing. They're looking through Francis was asking B. I'm thinking about getting this. Are there? Should I? Just looking if there was one she should absolutely stay away from. One that was like straight garbage. But she's picking up a spearhead. Brandon is going to be using several of mine until he figures out which one he really loves. But it's like I said, I know this. We're off topic already. This game is great. I know a lot of people like to play more competitive, but I like to pull out a board that is a quarter of the size of the board that I normally play on, and go into a small, focused fight between some different things, especially like while B and Barnett were playing Blood Bowl at the big coffee table. We just had that set up right next to them. So like while they were playing, we were kind of watching, we were getting games in. And I mean, Barnett's not the fastest Blood Bowl player. So, and neither is B when they're both sitting there. They were trying to learn their teams. We got a bunch of games in. And it was just like this other thing that was going on that was having a lot of fun. I'm saying, I know a lot of people poo-poo Spearhead, but no poo-poo. It's good. No poo-poo. That's all I got to say. All right, let's jump into this book because it's fantastic. All right, I have a lot of notes, and I hope you guys will bear with me. If you ever listened to this show and you've listened to me do these lore coverages, I mean, I go in depth. People joke around and say that, you just read the book to you, and it's not that much. But if you haven't, get ready because this is what we're going to do. Because I just hit through the main topics, and I cover everything I've been thinking about as I've been reading this. The brute nature of ogre kind. This is a great beginning. And if you're new to ogres, or if you're even new to some of the battletomes, if you just kind of have, this, they always start off with an opening page that gives you a bunch of just info, your basic lowdown on the race. And there's a lot of these little I call them pull-out boxes, but there's the stories or the zoom-ins. This is a bit of story being told on a personal level, from actual people living the life and interacting with these people. This stuff is fantastic, and you also get, and I love this, is they always got a fold-out, not the kind you're thinking of, you pervert, but this. They've got the big map fold out with all the cool stuff on it. Every one of these books looked like this. This is, if you're just looking for what's good to take to a tournament, none of what I'm going to tell you matters. Unless you're a person who wants to take what's good to a tournament, and you might want to have a paint scheme that matches up something cool, or if you're a rule of cool type of person who still wants to take stuff to a tournament, maybe some of this lore might get you motivated. This is the thing that gets me motivated to buy armies. I didn't want to buy this army. I promised Kira I would. I don't need another army. I don't want another army. But I have the Tyrant's Bellow Spearhead. And I have this one box now, which is more than a spearhead. So I got enough for a 1,000-point game because that's how they get you. But the new models are great, and the new lore is just making this. This is what makes me excited. Like, I want to play this. Like, I like this. So let's jump into the brute nature of ogre kind. 10 feet tall. 10 feet. Space Marines are 8. That's big. I mean, that's big. 10 feet tall, broad as a boulder, with hands like shovels. Everything about the ogres exudes a crass physicality. Lumbering, fierce warriors, able to burst a man open with a lazy blow and stomp through a flesh-shredding blizzard without complaint. Okay. What do we need to take from this? If one thing defines the ogre psyche, it's greed. They are less immoral than brutishly amoral. Their concern is always to satisfy their short-term desires, okay? This is interesting because, I mean, I remember back the 6th edition book, and I wish I had a copy of it here, but I don't. And the one thing I remember is the lead belchers, and they would always, like, if you don't know the old softcover books, they would have army entries, and along the sides, they might have a little picture of something, and then, like, a little quote from someone from that, that unit type. And I just remember the lead belchers one. It said, boom. That's it. Like, there was no real quotes from characters. I mean, even if you've never played in the old world ogres, right? So you don't know about Grisha's Gold Tooth and Golgfag Man Eater and Scrag the Slaughterer and those guys. They used to have named characters, but even those guys, we knew about them, but you don't get much dialogue from them. You don't get much thinking from them. They were just always so brutish. They were very similar to orcs and goblins back then. They're very similar to orcs now. I'm going to point out a lot of similarities that go through here. Actually, one of the things that this book did was really tied in how kind of all the destruction armies together. This is sort of like the mid-sized army based on pretty big orcs and pretty giant gargants, and the smaller, you got the smaller goblins, but you got the big trolls. There's sort of the upper middle size in this, and a lot of the stuff in this book seems to kind of pull a lot of these ideas together, these different armies. And I was having a really good time reading this, but it's their greed. They take what they want. They're big. They believe in might makes right, just like the gargants, just like the orcs. If I can take it, then it's mine. Up for a good scrap. All of this. It's just the destruction armies. I always used to think of destruction armies as, order is supposed to be working for good, I guess. Looking at you, daughters of Cain. Then you've got Chaos, who are obviously the bad guys. Then you got Death, which is all the undead factions. And then you had Destruction, which is like we like to break things, but we don't really have a purpose. And it just felt, I hate to draw this reference, but they're kind of like the Hufflepuffs, It's like, oh, here's the brave ones. Here's the rough and kind of evil ones. Here's the really smart ones. Here's the everything else. No offense, Hufflepuffs. Let's stop talking about Harry Potter. Destruction seemed like that. And a lot of things in this book have given me sort of a new insight, and I want to talk about that, especially when they discuss their god. I've always sort of been of the mind that they just worship the gulping god, and that I still remember the Great Maw from old Warhammer. The idea that they're just... The old story, the big, it was a big meteor that hit the old world, and there was this huge pit that you could see, sounds like it was breathing and had weird stuff in it. The pictures were like an actual cool, very large sarlacc. Once again, if you want to draw the references in, and they kind of worshipped it as this big hungering mouth that would devour everything. There were weird. If you went back and looked at it, there's some weird, like, was it really this? Was there really tentacle things? It had a very Cthulhu mythos sort of feel to some of that stuff at times. Like, it could have been that, could have been this, not certain, but it was a thing. Now it's just an aspect of Gorka Morka. And once you put that into perspective and you talk about their differences between these and how they're similar, they finally fit in my head. They fit now. So I'm not going to go through and read all of the cool little readouts. I would love to. And I mean, if this were running long and I knew how to do this and I was competent at putting out videos on YouTube, maybe I would do some dramatic reading, things like that. I really do enjoy that, but it's not going to happen right now. So let's see what else have we got here. Oh, Callus and Toll showed up. Oh, and they're talking to ogres. And look, there's some ogres that they know. And he says, Toll, you moldering old cut of gristle. And it was like, that's Grell Firefist. By the way, I love reading these books because when I'm playing ogres for this season of Blood Bowl, and I didn't know what to name them. And I got so many good last names from this book. But let's just keep going with this, okay? Ogres might want to just take things. It might be plunder and booty and treasure. It could be a desire to take new lands and conquer new places. But a lot of times it's literal hunger. Okay, this is sort of what they deal with. They're always hungry. They believe that to feast, and it's not just eating. They are feasting. This is what their god does, and by consuming in this way, they are communing with their god. It's very interesting. Also, when I got to I'm not going to go over each unit entry in the book, but I did when I was reading the gluttons. It's like they don't call themselves that. In fact, they list some of the old, like bulls, other things like that. Gluttons are just the name for young, untested ogres going into battle. Fresh meat, new recruits. And they don't call themselves gluttons. They don't understand the concept of gluttony. The idea of that you could eat too much is completely foreign to them. There is no such thing as eating to excess. So they don't call themselves gluttons. I found that I found that interesting. So let's keep going. Oh, beautiful artwork here. By the way, some of this artwork, and I'm going to try to put some artwork up on the screen. You don't need to just look at me the whole time. The lights are on it. I can't do it. This is really great. By the way, can we talk for a minute just about the physical changes in the ogres, besides the really cool helmets, which I really love? They almost look like they were really large, and they were just kind of pounded into shape around them. But they also kind of look like mandibles in the front. A lot of them come long. I see if they're going in for a bite. They keep talking about how they actually eat their enemies in combat. They might grab one and just bite into him, or they get up close and you're fighting. They'll bite you and start to eat parts of you. That helmet doesn't look conducive to it unless it's getting in there and you're just slamming them against it, and it's that metal that's tearing away at their neck or shoulders or whatever you're impaling them on your helmet. They lost the weird sort of culturally insensitive look that they used to have. They're bigger now. The fat looks more realistic. I don't know how else to say it. Their gut plates have gotten larger. They've moved up, so they're not just over the bellies. It's also sometimes covering up the breasts, especially for the female ogres, because it's covering them up. But, you'll see, especially on the butchers, their gut plate, the fat's hanging over the gut plate, and it's got that, when they're really wide and fat, and, especially with males, it's not just, they don't just look like breasts just hanging down front, the sides get that roll on the sides. I've seen that roll on myself when I was really heavy, and I know what it looks like. They got it down. These guys just look intimidating and frightening, and especially in this one when they're just going up against Skaven, who are maybe 4.5 feet tall, and these things are 10 feet tall. They look unstoppable, and it's really cool. Let's talk Hungry Hordes, okay? Now, if we're talking about the Hungry Hordes, the next section, first of all, simplicity is key with the ogres, all right? Many of them are stupid. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking they're all stupid. Just like here, think of what average intelligence is, and then understand that if that's average, then half the people are less than. Now think of your average ogre, which is honestly much better than I used to think of them, but still, you've got some really dumb ogres. But the truth is, most of them don't care about these other things. They don't know about stuff because they don't need to. Here's what I care about if I'm an ogre. When's the last time I ate? Do I have something to smash and eat? They're supposed to be communing and feasting with their god on the daily, So they just don't care about it. And that's what I think is interesting. Concept like cosmic mechanics and, debate on why they shouldn't just eat anyone who looks at them funny. They look at you like you're crazy. Why would I even want to talk about any of this, right? They're often accused of shunning technology. They're not. If it's simple, and let's face it, they're 10-foot tall behemoths. They've got to weigh 3,000 pounds? They're 10 feet tall. They are as long as a small car, and they're probably as wide as a small car. And unlike that big open space where you can get into a small car and sit, they are solid intestines and muscle and fat and gut plates. They're huge, right? And most of that stuff would break. But you show them something big and strong and solid that does a lot of damage that they can easily use and repair, they're all in. Construction that is robust, easy to repair, and capable of making a satisfying bang. Apparently not everybody likes that, though. I think this is another interesting thing. We're seeing a shunning of the black powder weapons by certain factions in the Ogres now, which, okay. And it works for the story, so I got no beef. But let's kind of go on with this. Now, this general philosophy of I don't need to know anything except what I need, like that's all I care about, and that's all I need to know. That applies to war too. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I like this part. Okay, listen. They enjoy fighting, but not in the all-consuming way as orcs. These barbarians seem as spirit. Okay, they consider orcs to be barbarians. Okay, these barbarians are seen as spirited, but a bit dull. The ogres think the orcs are dum-dums. Even self-righteous and how they go on about proper scrapping. Battle allows ogres to do what they really enjoy. Take things, whether it's loot or literal bites out of your enemy. Okay? The slaughter field is a feasting hall. So this is the difference. They see orcs as sort of... they're not... Ogres aren't in it for the scrap. They're in it because you have something they want, whether it's what you own or your meat. Sometimes it's your meat and what you own, because first they're going to beat you, then they're going to eat you. And if they're clever and not too hungry, they'll take the things off that they want to keep off of you before eating the rest. I mean, that's my guess. Pardon me. All right, here we keep going. What else do I have in the notes here? They love fighting, but not like orcs. Yeah. End of paragraph 2. Okay. Ogres' tactics are to stomp and swagger forward, cleavers and clubs swinging, trusting in their raw physicality to pull them through, and it often does. Mawtribes. Now they're talking about what are the Mawtribes? Mawtribes are the greatest of the ogre hordes. It's not just a mindless mass of muscle, although there's a mass of muscle. But this is where they start talking about the 3 breeds of ogres. Okay, some ogre armies, some smaller armies, might be all of one of these types. You know, their smaller clan might be all of that clan, and when they go out fighting on their own, they're all one type. When you get into Mawtribes, think of Mawtribes as not quite a Wa, but it's similar in that you get one leader who's very strong and starts pulling in the other leaders underneath them, either by coercion or by force. They all start and as they get bigger and stronger, of course, more start flocking. Sounds like orcs. It sounds amazingly a lot like orcs. So, and it says here, so let's see, what do we got? We've got gut busters, plunder-hungry warriors who embody when you think of ogres, you think of gut busters. The bulls, the iron guts, the tyrants, the big guys on foot who will punch your head off. That's what we're talking about, right? Maw seekers. This is the new thing, and I'm pretty kind of jazzed about this. Crazed fanatics enthralled to their race's gastro shamans and addicted to the spray of blood at close quarters. Okay, these are your mages. These are your guys who are in touch with the gulping god. These are the guys who do the spell work. These are the guys with the pots. These are the guys who are reading your entrails and looking at colons and small intestines and reading the plots and the things. These guys have risen recently. So we've got a whole cool, they get their own sort of category now, which I really like. And of course, there's the Beast Claw. And the Beast Claw are primitivists. Primitivists, nice word. In tune with the cruel elements who encircle their prey like monstrous jaws. Okay? These three categories do break down as we discuss them, and it's very interesting. Mercenaries. Ogre mercenaries, they're going to probably come from the Gutbuster tribe. So ogres are very clannish, and I think that's what we're coming up on. Oh no, we're not on the clannish stuff. Oh yeah, clans and maw tribes. We are going to get into that. Let's get into clans and maw tribes, sort of break them down a bit, and then we'll talk about some cool characters, and I might take a break then. Or you know what, if we can get through the clans and the maw tribes, the Beast Claw, and that, yes, before the history. We'll take a little break before the history. But let's talk about the clans, okay? Now, the first maw tribes came when a warlord of conquering appetite battered local ogre clan groups into line and declared that they were in charge. Sounds like a big boss, or who becomes a war boss. I mean, look, I didn't write it, but I mean, I've read enough of it. I think we can all see it, which I think is interesting because it's like, this is the MO of almost all the destruction armies, which sort of unifies them in an interesting way. They're not fighting to make civilization. They're not fighting to end civilization. They're not fighting to enslave civilization into a necropolis. They're fighting to fight for the sake of taking things. These guys are more organized than the others, but it's still a bunch of, we're going to fight and take things because this is what we do. The might makes right becomes this entire Grand Alliances thing going through here, and I love it. So let's see. It's a form of organization that all creatures of destruction inherently understand. Might for ogres always makes right. Now, they're not just roving armies. They do have concept like they put clan ties over the nation of ogres, right? The people you're with every day that get food with you and make sure that you are satiated. And remember, I care about me. These are the people that I hunt with. These are the people that have more loyalty than the bigger clan. Okay, and they take pride in their maw tribes and stuff. In fact, they all want to know who their founder was. They want to talk about, this is the guy who founded our club, and he could, it's my granddad could have beat up your granddad sort of thing, because they're children. And as they grow bigger. Like I said, your clan will usually be either a maw tribe or a Gutbuster or a Beast Claw. And as they get integrated into the larger maw tribes, because like the maw tribe it's a bunch of clans going together, and you need a little bit of everything, and they start to work together when that happens. Now, we're going to talk about the Meat Fist because they're the guys. The Meat Fist tribe. The Meat Fist tribe is the biggest, the baddest. They're the guys who are out there and doing things. Now, this is really interesting. They stand among the maw tribes. First among them, they are extremely literal, right down to their name. They claim their founder, Grawl Meatfist, got his moniker ripping out the guts of the Gurish Titanox, staining their own fist red with blood to honor this feat. There's the Boulderhead Maw tribe, which is old and primal rivals of the Meat Fist, have a similar saga about their hunter Vosjarl and his slaying of the Urbeast Yorhar. This disagreement has been an excuse for more than one devastating war. Most Meat Fit clans are Gutbusters, though there's a number of converts to the Maw Seeker faith. So even though they're mostly Gutbusters, sometimes you just get religion while you're out there, I suppose. And then you're starting to see the Allfrostons, which is the Beast Claw Raiders. It's funny with the Gutbusters getting more defined. they are very much defined in a Age of Sigmar way. And the Moss Seekers are relatively new. I mean, they're still butchers and stuff, but they're new to the lore. They're absolutely AOS coded, which makes the Beastclaw Raiders, which was the newest thing when 8th edition dropped. This was all the new stuff that went to that the ogres got before Warhammer Fantasy ended. They got all this stuff. And now that everyone has sort of gotten a Age of Sigmar makeover, these guys are the ones that are the old men of the ogre army. They're like the old traditionalists. Still, trusting and following the Everwinter and that stuff. So it's interesting how the newest thing that got added, the first new things that were added, they came out in 6th edition, and they got nothing new until 8th edition when this stuff came out. And now that they're sort of revamping everything, and none of that old stuff still exists model-wise, it's all getting new models or going away. The Beastclaw Raiders are these old traditionalists that go through. So the Meat Fists are the biggest, and that's kind of what you need to know. All right, now. They are the masters of modern Thondia, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the over-tyrant Morga the Mighty has reasserted the tribe's grasp on local ogres, orcs, and gargans, violently canceling any debts owed and stuff like that. Okay, she's coming in and cleaning house. They have a new over-tyrant, and she is brutal, right? We're hearing about her now. We're going to get to some of that. We're going to get to this lore. These characters, there's 4 named characters now. They went from having none to getting 4. I think it's 4. And they're all pretty interesting. But Morga is great, okay? Now, her success, and she's brought them up. I mean, this is Thorgrim Grudgebearer levels of bringing your people up. I'm not trying to compare them to dwarfs in any way. But their old leader, which, by the way, was her old man, she just went in and took him out and took over and have made ogres are now a terrifying force, and they're doing much more, and this is just great. Okay, what's funny is everyone thinks she's the chosen one. She's got the backing of the priests and the butchers and all this stuff. And once again, greed is what pushes all of these people, right? And her success is completely selfish. It says here she has whelped many ogres. So she has a lot of children. And as they've grown up, she is a brutal mother. She's a brutal leader. Her children either fight and learn to be tough, or they die. And now she's sending them to other tribes to mix with them, to go in there, to work with them, if necessary, to challenge the leader and take them over. She doesn't brook failure. This is really cool. Okay. Let's see. They call her the Great Mover, the Muvver. The Great Mover's commands carry across the heartlands through the words and fists of her children, nieces, and nephews, bolstered by the intense muttering of the butchers. And are there people that want to challenge her and take her out? Of course. But right now, ain't nobody got a chance. She's got her... It's the ogre version of a Neferata, except she is brutal in combat on top of it. Picture a Manfred in combat with a Neferata sort of connections throughout the ogre world. And you'll see why she is so cool. Now, the next section is called a path of consumption, okay? And so there's a lot of places. We get to the map, and the map's going to talk about a bunch of different places. So I just want to make sure that I got through all my notes to the mom. Oh, you know who she reminds me of? Mom from Futurama. the one who owns all the businesses, who everybody thinks is that sweet, Betty Crocker thing, and she's really a ruthless dictator. Because what's really interesting here, and we're going to talk more about this, is she doesn't, Morga doesn't believe the religion. She's using it. She doesn't care about anything other than expanding this and becoming the greatest over-tyrant that's ever been. And there's little stories in here. I think it was one of her nephews or something came back. They were trying to do something and they had gotten attacked, and he's there telling her about how everything went south. And she just asks him, she goes, so how did you manage to escape if everybody else? And he said, well, when everything tuned, I made a run for it. And she's like, oh, you did what? And he's like, I ran for it. She's like, I wish you hadn't have said that. And then she killed him. Flat out. Plack. It just took the club and took off his skull. She's brutal, and she's kind of awesome. In fact, not kind of awesome. She's really awesome. All right. So let's talk about some of these ogre domains, though, around the map. They talk about a couple of places you should know about. The Great Gut Fort in northern Thondia. Okay. Ogre strongholds are big and not complicated. They are just piled up defenses, right? The Great Gut Fort in northern Thondia is the Meat Fist Mawtribes hold. The granite throne is there that used to be the throne for Glob Glittermaw, and is now the seat of his murderous scion, the over-tyrant Morga the Mighty. There's a lot of stories about here. It's interesting to see. Many have tried to take the Black Fort, and nobody has been able to. Most those guys end up in the boiling pot. The Craw is an interesting place. The Craw has been taken by an ogre fleet and led by Red the Maw. Now, Red the Maw this is a Maw Seeker place, and he came in on the boats. Red the Maw is, and you're hearing about him. He comes in, he does all this stuff. He is a zealot. He becomes a big Maw Seeker leader. And we're going to get more about him later. But first, when he shows up, he's just Red the Maw, which is interesting. Now, he's a slaughtermaster, emissary of the ogre's ravenous god. He calls himself that. Now, he's done a lot, but what wound up happening was he started getting mad at Glob Glittermaw. Glob Glittermaw was the head of the Meat Fish tribe, and he was a terrible leader, and everybody hated him. Red the Maw spoke out about him several times, was unable to unseat him, and he decides to go to Shyish to go and find, because he heard of a big open maw there, something going to be leading things down. So he's going to go there and find the secrets. He's being drawn there. He's got this overwhelming compulsion. He's got to go there. Sounds like when the Weird Boys, or whatever they call them from the Iron Jaws, when they start to hear the thump, 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 thump of the beat, and then they take off because they kind of lost their brains. That's what this sounds like to me. But he sort of goes off on this mission, and he's gone. Red, the character, is the guy. He comes back changed, having seen the Gulping God himself. A lot of people think it's the Shyish Nadir, but he's actually coming back, actually even weirder, which I just get a lot of that weird Eldritch sort of vibes from some of that stuff. But that's just me, right? But the Craw, like I said, it's important because it was taken over by, like I said, sort of ogre pirates, and that Red the Maw is the guy who sort of led them. The chasms of Carcass Dance, in one of the most ancient and Gurish places. They like it because it looks like teeth. It was the former home of the Drogruk. Drogruk? That's Kragnos, the dumb one. There's good weapons there for the biggest ogres because the Drogruk were huge. They were monstrous in size. And if you go down to where they were, that's where you find a lot of some of these bigger weapons and things like that. And there's still a lot of big beasts down here. There is good stuff to hunt if you want to hunt things. So it's just naming out a couple of big. I mean, they do this every book. They name a couple of strongholds for this army in case you want to start getting into the lore and seeing where your particular guys came from. They do talk about 3 other characters, which is actually really fun and interesting. And we're going to get to that before we get to this whole path of consumption with the Godmouth and all the ravenous onslaught and all of this stuff that goes on. What is the Godmouth? This is this huge sinkhole near the Craw. And they believe that this giant sinkhole is one of these mouths of the gulping god. But there's weird noises coming from it, and it smells and stuff like that's going on. And basically they believe someday it will vomit forth a great revelation. And so this is part of what's going on here. Now, one of the things that they do want to talk about is that when an ogre horde goes out, it's not like a Wa, right? They say they're on the Maw path, but it's not religious in any way, shape, or form. It's not what they do. Being on the Maw path is basically it's just going out to that savagery and going off on that run and collecting and eating and just and gathering, and they all do it, and they go out and there are seasons of hunting. It reminds me of Viking stuff a little bit, to be honest, where they go out for seasons of hunting, and they don't talk too much about the seasons, but they do mention them coming back home like in the fall for like a big celebration of all the plundering they've done, and it gets into weird like ogre orgy type stuff. They talk a lot about ogres and ogres having children and ogres procreating. We don't need to go into that on this show. It's we all know that this show is at best supposed to be PG-13, and I don't want to think about any of that. So, but you know what I'm going to do real quick is what I would like to do is take a break because I need a quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about just a couple of these characters who aren't named characters but are good story bites. And then we're going to get into the 3 distinctions of the major clans between your gut busters, your maw seekers, and your the other guys. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Shut up. We're back. I'm back. There's no we. Oh, where's Lindsay? This is Lindsay. Now you've seen her. It says on the round, it says official. It says Lindsay, Canada, and official. And I know she looks maybe like somebody else you've seen before, but I assure you that's not it, and we are not trying to infringe on anybody's copyrights. But that's Lindsay, Canadian Hockey Puck. She says to let you know she loves you all. All right. Let's talk about a couple of these characters. Now, we're just going to talk about them because they just have some fun, interesting. I love when they give us these not playable characters, but these characters that will help you just to build up some background and just to flesh out the story of these guys, and it's great. First, you got Brutta Breakbones. Brutta Breakbones is Morgna's second eldest daughter. So is it Bruda? Bruda, Bruda Breakbones. Maybe it's Bruda. Fighting is everything. She is not a cunning strategist. She is not an inspiring leader. She doesn't interest. She fights in the pits. Like, she's a pit fighter, like in her spare time. She's great to send out because she just likes to break things. She's one of those. Now, what's interesting is she goes with that now. Let's see. She is part of another group. She's one of them have been sent out. She's not a leader. She goes and crushes skulls. She's become something of a totem to the Hold Brawl, with many following her grunted commands over those of the tyrant Tharg Crushergut, much to his growing annoyance. She is the second eldest daughter of, and once again, Morga sends her children out to go and be part of, and they have truces and treaties with these other clans. This is part of it. They come together. She's the head of the Meatfish tribe. These are smaller clans. She sends her emissaries out, who are her blood relatives, mom, and gets them to these places. And it even says right here, he doesn't like that. It pushes her to fight harder because she knows who her mother is. And in doing so, she unknowingly climbs the ranks of the Hold Brawl. She only cares about fighting. She just wants to prove she's a good fighter. But that is making people in this troop start to follow her. So eventually, here's the thing. These guys are rivals. They're all rivals. Yes, they follow her. She is the head of the Meatfish tribe. Their group is the head group. But these smaller clans are still all a part of it. And having them in there, if enough of them start to follow her and he gets mad and does something, and if she becomes the head of them, it says here literally their greatest potential rival suddenly becomes a vassal group. There's a lot of ogre politics happening. Ogre politics. How many of you thought when you tuned in today, you were going to hear me say, ogre politics is really taking over in this group? What is happening? What is happening? I don't know. All right. Ogor Vardruk, the grand whelp of Bragoth Vardruk, most noted of the Frost Kings. Okay, no living Frost King's name commands more awe than Bragoth Vardruk, and this is one of his grandchildren. Now let's see. He is considered canny by ogre standards. Let's see. He convinced Bragoth to hunt a great beast alongside Grakgob, solidifying their alliance. So he understands the politics, even though he's not very interested in it, and he doesn't seem very intelligent. Plus, he's got a many times broken nose and face. He doesn't look very bright. He looks a bit thuggish, even for an ogre. So people sort of underestimate him, and I think it's pretty cool. Also, what's really interesting is so Morga the Mighty is his grandmother, but Glob was an enemy to his other side of his family, right? So he has some weird feelings about that, but this is his grandmother, and so he is loyal to her, even though he's part of a group on his one side that is not as friendly to them, which is interesting. Once again, he's in there sort of as a spy, and it even says he has vultures because he's like one of the hunters, right? His vultures are constantly going back to Morga, keeping her aware of what's going on with this, even though he's riding around with them, which I think is really interesting. And then there's Oglog Gutbiter, and this is Morgna's nephew. He is cruel and feral. He will challenge anyone to ritual brawls, right? So Bruta Breakbones is sort of like with the Gutbusters, right? Ogor Vardruk is out there doing stuff with some of the Beast Claw people. And here you've got Oglog Gutbiter, who is basically just a brute. And something about the Moss Seeker's religion attracted him. Of course, that's always about smashing, eating, tearing things apart, and looking at all the entrails to get information. But Morga sent him there to fight with the Blood Gullet, and he's turned for the religion. He is brutal, but he's not really a butcher either. He's just loves that fighting and scrapping and ripping things apart and being covered in blood. He has fallen under the sway of Red the Maw. And now he does, this is something that is mentioned in there, which I like in the lore. Since he's sort of become a convert to the religion, he really is like becoming Red the Maw's right-hand man. And if his loyalties come in question, he may need to be dealt with. This is like The Godfather with ogres. I don't understand what's happening. I just know I am fascinated by this. Like, this was not... I didn't expect this at all. I wish I would have gotten this early so I could have really gotten into it and dropped this early to get you all to get into the pre-order on this and stuff, because I am just so excited about this. So let's kind of go along here. Gutbusters. Let's talk Gutbusters, shall we? Notes. Always got notes. All right. Gutbusters are what we think of when we hear ogre. Okay? They're not as traveled as the Beast Claw. They're not as zealous as the Maw Seekers. They're a little bit of everything. And the call of the Maw Path is always the thing for them. The call of the Maw Path and their own greed is what brings them forward all the time. They have little organized worship of the gulping god outside of the feasting that they all do. These are the guys who kind of just see him everywhere, in every feast, in everything they eat, every animal that eats another animal. They just see him sort of everywhere. They, I don't know, they're sort of more like, sort of hippie. They're not religious. They're more spiritual, I guess you would say. I see the gulping god in every bite, in every taste, Now, what's really interesting here is wrestling, belching contest, beast lifting, and all the rest are common events whenever Gutbusters gather in number. With those who fail, especially spectacular fashion, usually saved embarrassment by being eaten. Cannibalism of one's kin is no taboo among the Gutbusters, just a chance for more meat. This is interesting. This is one of the cannibalism, as we've discussed on this show many times, is the easy bad. People who eat other people of their own race are monstrous. We don't like cannibals. Cannibalism is bad. Apparently in the ogres... Dude, they eat everything. What do you expect? They're not going to eat. Like, their whole thing is they eat everything. Why wouldn't they eat others of their type? Great. You've managed to... Cannibalism is the easy bad unless you're ogres, and then it's just the way. All right. What else about the Gutbusters? What do we want to talk about here? Most Mawtribes are formed from competing Gutbuster clans known as Wargluts. Okay, they come together with their warlords, paying fealty to the over-tyrant, but they keep their own names, laws, and traditions. So these are the fingers, or the different fists. If we're talking like orcs, and it's fine. It's very cool. I'm all for it. You want to keep your own name and your own clan and your own identity. Of course you do. Just like any division in any army, you're part of the bigger army, but your little division or your group or your whatever. Can you tell I wasn't in the military? Oh, excuse me. Great googly moogly. Okay. So yeah. Let's see what else. They are almost, this is interesting. They are almost unique. The Gutbusters are almost unique among all of the destruction forces, as they have a concept of empire building. Now, what kind of an empire? It's not, it basically comes down to, y'all better be afraid, and y'all better have what we want, and if you have what we want, y'all better be ready to give it up. Otherwise, we will eat you and take it anyway. But it's this idea of just be afraid of us. Don't get out of line. This is our territory. If we come through, we will take what we want. You will provide. And we may eat you anyway if you look tasty. Okay. Okay. But it's very interesting. Where it gets interesting is that Morga doesn't like it. Okay? She doesn't like the idea necessarily of this... working with these other races, or leaving them to be and just having them be afraid of us, like having them be afraid of us, because now I'm an ogre. This episode, I'm an ogre. Oh, let me adjust. I'm sorry. I get uncomfortable when I sit for too long because I'm an old man. Here we go. I'm explaining like everything I do now that I normally wouldn't do because I'm on the air, which is a weird thing. I'm still getting used to it. All right. So, she doesn't like city ogres. City ogres, especially when they closed the gates of Azir, and all of the ogres who stayed in there, they've come out and they're like, they don't like them at all. You are doing too much with the thinlings, and they don't like it. Mercenary ogres, hiring yourself out to get paid. People, you working for money? No, take the money from the guys because you're an ogre. And we takes what we wants. And that is the theme, the big idea running through all of this. And so she doesn't like it. And what's interesting is since the Hour of Ruin has happened, they see this as an opportunity, okay? The Hour of Ruin, all this game came up and wrecked everything, and suddenly everything, that Sigmarite city that they haven't really done too much to, they've kind of been around, and maybe some of these city ogres have been coming over there and negotiating or doing, their defenses are weakened, and if your defenses are weakened, then you're food. And I love this. I really do. I think this is so much fun. We may have had treaties with you. We may have left you alone before. But your defenses are down. And it's not even going to be hard to break them. So we're going to do that because we can, and because might makes right. And this is just fantastic. Morga the Mighty is sort of a terrifying opponent because she just wants to continue to conquer and build up power and be followed and just conquer and destroy and watch it all burn. And I don't know how that's any different from a Grimgor Ironhide or anyone else who is just on the warpath for being on the warpath, whether it's a Wa or it's a Maw path or whatever. This is an opportunity to take out their weakened prey. Why are we, Blade, the first movie, Frost. Why are we negotiating with these people? They're our food. That's basically what. Why are you making deals with them for pay? Right? If you want that money, they should give it to you, or you'll eat them, or better yet, eat them and take it. Why are you? They are our food. That's all there is to it, and I love it. That's actually really cool. There is an excerpt here about the gut plate. The gut plate. If they value anything above all, it's their guts. And it's interesting. They do find they call it gut magic, and everything about their intestines they find magical. They find the eating and their digestion to be magical. And as it's said here in the book, the fact that they can eat rocks and dirt and linoleum and clouds and whatever, they can eat it. When you can literally eat anything, that's kind of an interesting gift from the gods, and that's what they talk about. So the gut plate, nothing spooks an ogre like the idea of losing their gut, whether by magical curse or being slit. Disemboweling is the most shameful way to die in their culture. I want to repeat that. Disemboweling is the most shameful way to die in their culture. Even tyrants think twice before ordering it as a punishment. Okay. They wear gut plates to protect their guts. They're huge. They're pretty thick. They're hard to hurt, but this is covered. This is their one vulnerable place. They take a great show of pride, decorating them, putting all this stuff on them. To go guts out To deliberately remove your gut plate before a contest is serious business, done only when an ogre wants to make a true statement of intent. If you are fighting guts out, you are fighting to the death, and somebody's getting disemboweled, and that's just how it works. And that is so awesome. It's just, and they're so much bigger now. Look, like it comes up over their chest as well. Look at that. It comes up over the chest as well as just covering the stomach, because it is. Now, some of these models look a little weird, especially if you got on arm armor, because, and a helmet and a gut plate, and then you got naked shoulders. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. It looks a little weird, but it's pretty cool. Let's talk Maw Seekers, okay? Maw Seekers, where's my notes? They're the religious ones. Now, the Gulping God is Gorka Morka. This is important. The Gulping God is Gorka Morka, another version of him, right? Their faith in their Gulping God remains base, bloody, and shamanistic, but those who have joined the cult have developed an active and crassly performative zeal never before witnessed in ogre kind. Their visionary leader, Red, teaches that the hour of ruin heralds their deity's jaws opening wide before a great reality-ending bite snaps shut. I don't want to hear about reality ending in all of these books. I really don't. I mean, I honestly believe, after talking with B and her getting me off the roof, that Battle Planet thing was a honeypot, and I hope it was, because God, that's so dumb. So the interesting thing here is that, okay, the butchers are the prophets of this group. They have gastromancy. They go through your entrails and it works magic and does weird stuff. They have very simple commandments, by the way, and this is important. Okay. Simple but brutally enforced. 1, take no prisoners except to eat later. Do not kill your prey with any explosive or complex weapon that might spoil the meat. Cleavers, flesh cutters, and even bare hands are best. Ensure that the Gulping God is fed his portion of bloody gruel through a new feast each day. This might just seem like more excuses for gluttonous savagery. It's magic, and it's still communing with them. And you find Maw Seekers in every stratum of ogre society, it says. Oh, okay. They have been embraced now with Morga the Mighty. Red the Maw has now aligned himself. Red came back. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to their individual stories a little bit later. But Red, the first guy we talked about, he left, went to Shyish, came back weird. He's now a prophet. Him and Morga are sort of together on this. So you've got the weird religious guys with the just fight, take the territory guys. The only thing we're missing is the Beast Claw, who kind of look at all of that and are like, you guys are missing the point, man. We're just supposed to be riding the front of the cold front and going through and just taking things and fighting and taking down big monsters like our God did. It's some pretty interesting stuff. Now, butchers, groups of butchers are known as Gollops, Gollops. They are named after the frankly obscene ogre festival of fertility overseen by the butchers after a successful raiding season. So yeah, that, they have a lot of kids, and it's during the big fertility. They come back with all of the spoils and the meats and the things, and then they celebrate. And it's I don't know, picture the third Matrix movie before you realized it wasn't that great, and just remember that party where Morpheus tells them all, and then people are all dancing and doing it, and just make them ogres, and that's pretty much what that is. And I'm just going to move on. They are not alone. The Maw Seekers' primal call grows stronger, and wherever the Gollops roam, more ogres are swept up in their apocalyptic fervor. They're pretty cool. Some ogres go so far down the ravenous path, though, that they become basically beasts, and they only listen to the butchers. That's another interesting little bit. But yeah, that's who the religious ones are. Now, the gulping god is Gorkamorka, and I bring this up because as we talk about some of their history, some of the things that they talk about when they were out with the gulping, like the gulping god actually took form and was running through and destroying giant beasts. They rampaged across the realms. And I'm thinking, that sounds like when Gorka Morka said, hey, I don't really want to sit in the Pantheon. I'd rather go run around and kill things. And that's kind of what he did. And since they are the same, all aspects of this same God that they all worship with different names, some of these things are tying in really interestingly. For a group of just disparate armies that didn't seem to have any sort of focus, seeing this kind of stuff happening and seeing what's going on here is just giving me a whole new ideas and interest in destruction armies. Let's talk about Beastclaw Raiders. Ogres were doing well long before men or elves or Dowarden even started putting down little circle fortresses. They're little Motte and Baileys. Before those guys started doing any of that, before they were civilization building, the ogres were doing their thing. And that makes sense because when you're nomadic and you are raiders, just coming in and smashing and killing and taking what you need, it's much easier to thrive right off the bat. I mean, we all know the mortal realms were formed after the destruction of the world that was, and some of those people survived. Somehow got sucked through the warp, the vortex, they got sucked through the plot device that wound them up in a mortal realm. And apparently enough people survived from the world that was that big swaths of the mortal realms are all populated with them. So, I guess it wasn't as bad as we thought when the world that was died. Not so many of the people died. They just got sucked to the new existence, apparently. That's traumatic and terrible, and I'm not suggesting it's good, but let's see, it is what it is. So what do we got here? Let's keep going. The gulping god and took physical form to kill and eat alongside his followers. Okay. Here. First pair, hold on. It talks about the orcs being his Templars and stuff. Once again, the orcs never seem to care about the ogres. They care about Krumpen. Here you're getting insight into other destruction armies that are around Gur that they interact with, and I think it's kind of interesting. So, when the realms were younger, colder, and crueler, a time when the gulping god's hunger was so vast he took physical form to mangle flesh alongside his followers. Though the orcs were his Templars in their primitive way, it was the ogres who were his pathfinders, his vanguard, and above all, his slayers of great beasts. In the modern era, the Gutbusters have been... Okay, and now this is also interesting because before they talk about how they get along with them, and it's like the Gutbusters and the Maw Seekers all kind... There's some tension there. But they all seem to get along. And then you've got the Beastclaw and they're all Frosten, who were sort of removed a bit. Like they're not mentioned as much because they all sort of do on their own. And now you see the guys standing off on their own and kind of what they really think of this. The Gutbusters have been swallowed by their greed for wealth and power. And the Maw Seekers fall ever deeper into the worship of the bloody feast alone. But the Beastclaw ogres remember their purpose: to hunt, kill, and of course eat whatever the wilds can throw at them. They follow the old ways. Everything modern ogres value: prestige and infamy among the thinlings, strongholds stacked with plunder, the great secret of mercenary work. Oh, they put that in quotes, the great secret, and capitalized, because some ogre eventually figured out that I could get paid really well to do something I really like, which is instead of just going and killing random people, these people will pay me to go kill those people over there. And that is fine. Because now not only do I get to do the thing I like and eat those people and take that stuff, but I'm getting paid. And some ogre at some point figured out mercenary work, and the rest of them called it the great secret, the thing that they can go do, But this is corruption. Beastclaw Raiders don't like it. This was their way long before others began to willingly embrace this. The Allfrostens, they want to keep that purity, and they do talk about the Everwinter a little bit. It's not as prominent, but they do talk about it. It enforces the nomadism on the Beast Claw. Some don't know if it's a curse from the winter gods of Shyish. Some don't know if it's a bonus or a boon, because a lot of the Allfrostons, which are, the clans of the Beastclaw Raiders, a lot of them have realized, as they're going through, that they can use the Everwinter. They can let it come and let the fog and the cold come in, where they just come out of it, like in the fog, coming out of that mist and that darkness. It's terrifying when all of a sudden this rolls in and now these giant monsters come out of it. It's very, I think it's very cool. I think it's very interesting. They don't really go as much into what the Everwinter is exactly, and that's fine. But they, like every ogre warlord wants it, they can track anything. This is all they do, is just ride the edge of the Everwinter, hunting big monsters and keeping it the way it was when the Gulping God took physical form and ran with them and just was eating and destroying. They are keeping that going on. And I think that's really, really kind of fascinating. It makes for some good, it makes them interesting to want to play. You've added a lot here that, in my opinion, makes this for some interesting depth of characterization and of what's going on. Let's see. The Everwinter, like I said, is less defined here. Still goes back to they haven't been mortal realmed. Like, they're still doing the things they used to do. And yes, they did it in the beginning of the Mortal Realms, but in the beginning of the Mortal Realms, remember when the first book first dropped and everything was just sort of words. Everything was sort of ported over from the old game. They don't name characters, all disappeared, nothing happened, and they were just this. And that's the last thing that came, and they have not really been updated. They're still doing what they used to do, making them the purists and the anachronists and all that, which, once again, I love the fact that the newest stuff is now the oldest stuff because of the super line refresh and the lore refresh. Taking another break, gonna come back, and when we do, we're gonna talk the history, the last bit of the history, how the Maw's opening, and then I want to talk about our last segment. We're going to talk about Morga, Grell Firefist, who apparently is a dude, and he doesn't come up almost in any of the lore, but I think I think you can actually play him. So if you can, then we got to bring this dude up too, because of course we do. And I don't know if he's in here. I'll have to find him during the break. However, we are going to mention him because he does get his own page, and he's got to be in here. It's got to be in here. I can't be so stupid. There's Morga. There's Kragnos. There he is, Grell Firefist. So, yes, 4 named characters, and, that's up. So, we're going to come back. We'll talk about Red. We'll talk about Morga. We'll talk about Firefist, and then we're going to wrap this up. Back again. All right, let's talk a hulking history, okay? We just get a short, page and a half, 2 pages to catch us up on what's been going on. Although it does have some of the sidebars of cool little side stories from the Ages of Myth and the Age of Chaos and stuff, and that's pretty important. All right, let's talk about the history real quick. And once again, I'm going to refer to my notes to keep it quicker here. Ogres have been doing their thing since before Sigmar got here. Ogres have been out there doing the ogre thing since before he showed up and started his pantheon. They rolled through the realms doing what they do, hunting what they hunt, getting it right? What's interesting is then the Age of Chaos comes about. The Age of Chaos is basically a challenge. They went to war. Just like all the destruction armies, Chaos invades, they're going to answer the challenge. Okay? It's what they do. Now, what's interesting is they talk about these guys fighting back, and then there's something named Vinterbad who the Vinterbad offered their services to the Ever-Chosen's armies. So some ogres went over to the Ever-Chosen side. Even as their butchers complained of meat spoiling and their guts roiling in apprehension, most ogres tried to carry on unabated, just keep going no matter what. Such ignorance would not be forgotten by the shamans. They were warned not to go do this. They did it anyway. You're going to go fight with Archeon, you're out of the ogres. At least, for the we don't want you. And I get that. We don't want you. Ogres of all cultural stripes start taking advantage. Some became rich and fat through plundering the collapses of empires. Gutbusters fought frontier wars against similarly covetous Hobgrot companies. They plundered Kazalite holds. They did all this stuff. Now, what's interesting is the Age of Chaos goes, and we're now in the Age of Sigmar. And let's go to jump. Because, they fought all through. They didn't get wiped out, obviously. They never really surrendered. Some people went over and joined. Everybody else just fought or died. It's what ogres do. It didn't matter that suddenly there was a bunch of chaos monsters coming at them. Unless it was literal chaos demons who, when they get destroyed, turn to protoplasm and can't really be eaten, which would upset the ogres. In fact, they hate the Stormcast too because they really want to eat that lightning. They really want to eat that lightning. That lightning gets away and like, nope, that's our food. They think it would be a great, nourishing super feast. They're not the brightest. Okay. This section is called The Rule of Glittermaw, and this is great. Now, first of all, his name is Glob Glittermaw. Okay. A glob with two B's is still a glob, a lump, something usually gross. A glob would be, something slimy or something like that, something greasy, maybe, a glob. And his name is Glittermaw. Now, your mouth, the maw, Glittermaw, you have glittering mouth. Glob Glittermaw sounds so much like somebody is paying tribute or just being lazy. I don't know which. I'm going to say tribute because I like the writers. To Grecius Goldtooth. Not a glob, but Greece. And not a Glittermaw, but a Goldtooth. And if you don't know who that is, there was a beautiful model for it. And if I find a picture, it'll show up right about now. But Grecius Goldtooth, he had this model. He was sitting on his throne, wearing a crown, waving around a big gem-encrusted club. And he was being carried by hordes of Noblars, which are just... They're just this tiniest. They're like snotlings. They're bigger than snotlings, but they're smaller than goblins. And the Noblars, it was a glorious model. But this is that dude, right? For all intents and purposes, for what we're doing here. Glob Glittermaw. He was a terrible leader. He became powerful because he's a great fighter and he was out doing what ogres do. But then what winds up happening is he was just cruel and bloated, and he called Glittermaw because he encrusted his teeth in gold. Like he got a grill, right? He was that greedy, and that is what caused his downfall. He brought might to the Meat Fist, expanding the policy of selling. Okay, he brought a lot of power to them because he hired out his people as mercenaries, which they came back with a lot of money, some of which went to him. So he's renting out his people. A lot of ogres don't think this is the way to go. A lot of ogres are upset with him. Many Beastclaw saw him as the ultimate example of gutbuster profligacy. Gutbuster profligacy. The Battle of Ice and Gold, waged on the plains outside the Gut Fort, saw him almost overthrown by the All Frostons united under Bragoth Vardruk. He was saved only by all the debts and all the favors he was owed. Interesting. Butchers increasingly mutter that he disrespected the Gulping God through love of material wealth. Red the Cleaver, who had come to prominence during harsh raiding season, set off and so that was Red the Cleaver. Goes off. He's going to come back as Red the Maw, and of course there's all of his children. Basically, here's what happens. Okay, and this is what's important. This is what you need to know. Glob was very smart businessman. for an ogre, and it made him wealthy and powerful, and people did what he said because he could spread the wealth, and there was always plenty of food. Ogres, if something works, they don't try to change it. So what you have is you have a guy who came to power and then became rich and fat and basically corrupt. He loved the power and the wealth, and he started to build this. And of course, all of the little guys, the smaller type, who see him succeeding this way, start doing the same thing. They want to succeed too. This may sound familiar, especially if you're from America and you've been awake in the last couple of years. So you have this totally corrupt leader, and you have all of his totally his sycophants who basically are like, well, it works for him, so I will do the same. And this starts. And those who feel that this is going off the path, that we should not be hiring ourselves out. Once again, why are we negotiating with these people? They are our food. All right? He sells these guys out. He sends people on to war. If you are part of a clan or part of a group that he does not care for, he's going to send his people out to war against you. And he sends his children out as his generals and all of this stuff. All of this stuff is happening. Then what else did happen that was going on? I'm just trying to get all of this. I want to make sure I've got... Here we go. No, did I skip a page? Okay, Glob is a Greek tragedy skinned in some bizarre fantasy realm Scarface. Red the Cleaver goes to Shyish because he's so sick of what's happening here. He says, I'm gonna find. I have visions. I need to go find the Gulping God because what's happening here is not good. Right? And I'll come back to the timeline stuff because there's some cool stuff in there. But so what happens is everybody wants him gone. And what happened, what really made it the worst is he's basically held on throughout the age of Sigmar. People thought the Shyish Nadir, with that all opening up, might be some sort of thing of the Gulping. It just, none of that. The Hour of Ruin happens. Skaven are everywhere. Skaven are into the ogre stockpiles. They're into they've broken into, from their tunnel up, they've broken into ogre fortresses. And rather than do what, say, other races did, which is lock down and defend their own, Glob decided, you need my help even more. Like, people were coming, we need some ogres to help defend our stronghold. Please send us some ogres. Oh, demand has spiked and now the price has tripled. And if you could pay, he would send out his best to go help you. What he was not doing was defending his own places. His own people were suffering while he was getting rich, sending his guys off to fight other wars in other places. And his people finally had it. And as well they should. All right? So then, let's see. What does it say here? So the name Morga was not one that many Sigmarite strategists would have been familiar with, but other people have heard of her. To the ogres, she was one of the most famed of Glob's spawn. She had ignored, the wars in the Heartland, when he was sending out people to fight, and when Glob was sort of cementing some of his power during the Age of Sigmar and cowing all these things, she was not one of his children who went to fight with him. She ignored it. When he called people, she didn't come. What did she do? She stayed on the outskirts. She roamed far, fighting empires and beings that no Sigmarite could name. Remember, and this is an important note, and if you're new to this, this is a big thing. When you look at these maps, and we talk about these places in the mortal realms, and these huge areas that they're covering, and these vast spaces, the populated areas, the areas we're talking about, where the Age of Sigmar is happening, where the forces of order are trying to carve out, the Age of Chaos so fully conquered the realm. 90% of the mortal realms are still under the sway of chaos. Now, it may not be directly, but they've conquered these areas and they are nightmare areas, right? 90% of the mortal realms are dangerous, open places that are not under any sort of real sort of control. If you're living in Gur with just big beasts in the lands of destruction, this is prime opportunity to learn to become stronger and tougher and a better fighter. And that's what she does. She's out there fighting people we don't even know about. She's out there fighting monsters that these people haven't even seen. And she's getting stronger and she's getting better and she's getting tougher. And she's all doing it out of sight of everybody else. Nobody really knows what she's doing. But when she's out there fighting, when she comes through, people know about her. People know that she is tough. Okay? Now, with a great horde at her back, she crossed the Thondian border and makes for the Gut Fort. Remember, she's a purist too. She believes in conquering and growing, but not all of this, what her dad, just sending ogres out, negotiating. She is not a diplomat. She's a conqueror. None doubted she would challenge for leadership. As she all but smashed the doors from the feast hall and confronted her father, the tirade she spewed, elaborating on her sire's craven heart and rancid innards, So she comes in and talked so much smack that the place went silent as she was just talking smack about her old man. It was clear that he would have to fight her, and they went, as I mentioned earlier, guts out. Before the eyes of the warriors, they took to the grand pit and went after. Now, Glob is not, she wins, but not by a ton. Glob is no slouch. He didn't become leader just because he was clever. He's not weak. And they fought. It was basically sort of them fighting and taking knocks at each other. They're both bleeding. They're both hurt. She knocked out one of his gold-covered canine teeth, one of these big old teeth, and then grabbed it and jammed it into his neck. And he finally bled out. Tottering and bleeding from countless wounds, she cracked open his skull and feasted on his steaming brains. Now, here's the thing. She's all beat. She's all tired. She's all hurt. There are other guys who would love to be in charge and are giving her the eyeball. And they're like, this girl's got to go. And all the guys who get ready, all of the ogre tyrants who are like, well, she's weak. This is my chance to take over and lead. All of their stomachs explode. Their guts burst out of them. And they all drop to the floor. And then who comes in? Red the Maw. That's right. Him and the butchers, they come in chanting, and they name her the Chosen One. And anybody now who thinks they're going to fight realizes, oh, this isn't a good plan. Literally all the best of the most dangerous, the biggest threats to her leading, especially after fighting her father and being weakened. They just got they just got beat. It was just not even anything close. It was like, oh, look, they're about to pounce. Oh, no, they're all dead. And now she's taken over. And although this sort of took some of the shine off of her victory, that some of these other guys were killed for her, she doesn't care. She's in charge now, and she doesn't care. And this is the beauty of it. She doesn't believe. She's just a conqueror. And as long as what he's doing works for her, they're fine. They're getting along just fine. If it starts to get too in the way, she'll have to do something about it. Red and the Maw Seekers helped sway the Meat Fist. The concession she made, allowing the shamans to control entire clans and ceding to demands that the Wargluts abandon blasphemous black powder tools and other weapons that spoiled the meat, were deemed acceptable, given how readily their message and her fame spread. But to truly begin uniting the ogres, a victory would be needed. Thankfully, the Skaven swarming across Thondia made a convenient target. And basically, this is what happens. Morgan does a lot of fighting. There's more stories about this and things that are going on. But Red comes back and he says there's a problem. All of the religious people, there is a problem. We are not following the right path and bad things are going to happen. And then the hour of ruin happens and everything opens up and they're like, this is what happens when we don't do what we're supposed to do. And so they take this as a personal affront and they are going to go and start wiping out Skaven. And they love it. They have the best time doing it. And it's just fantastic. It becomes sort of their thing. This is the push. Look, this is so bad that those little tiny rat things. Oh, and they hate the rats. And let me talk about this. This is an interesting part, right? As more of during the age of Sigmar, when the city ogres, the ones who are still in Azir, they are seen as abominations. Not only were they often seen standing shoulder to shoulder with thinlings as equals, but they lacked real guts, an end-of-days mockery of true ogredom. And when the Skaven struck, they knew their god was angry. They perceived the cosmic evil of the ratmen more stark. This is interesting. Skaven consume but do not feast. They feel no satisfaction, only a manic need to defile. When the hour of ruin broke, many ogre feast halls were infested by vermin swarms. Ogres far and wide looked to see how Glob Glittermaw, and then Glob didn't do the thing. This is an affront. They eat everything in their path, Skaven, like ogres, but they're not doing it to feast. They're doing it to consume and destroy. And that's evil. They're not feasting. They're not loving the feasting. They're just eating. And that's bad. I think I love that. I think that's really a super interesting take on this Skaven stuff. And so this is where ogres are at. You have Morga, the mighty, leading them. You've got Red the Maw, the religious leader, going. I don't think we have any named Beastclaw Raider characters, which I think is a shame. But this is the path that the ogres are on. They know what's going on around them. They don't care in anything more than how it affects them, which is great. It just works. But this is who they are and what they are. And I think it's cool. We're going to take one last break. We're going to come back, and then we're going to talk about some of the special characters, give a little bit more of their history and a little bit more of their background, and then we're going to wrap up the show. Back again, folks, and here we are. Listen, before we get into talking about the characters and stuff, I just want to talk about a few things that pop up in the little timeline, the little sidebars that go down. Talk about Age of Myth and Age of Chaos and Age of Sigmar. They talk about the fall of the Titans. You've heard about the Sky Titan stuff. That's where the original Sky Titan stories are, where the ogres got the giant cannons from. Now they talk a little bit more about it, and depending on which ogres you talk to, you get one of two stories. Either they fought alongside the Gulping God and took out these Titans who had the gall to take something or eat something that the Gulping God wanted, and they took them out and then plundered and succeeded. Or they fought alongside the Sky Titans against some other alien force of some sort, and they survived, but the Sky Titans were wiped out. In that place. Which version of the story you hear really depends on how close they are with Gargants. If you've got an ogre group that's really close with Gargants don't like hearing that the Sky Titans were wrecked because those are part of the Gargant peoples. So we fought alongside them, and they fought bravely. Those are when you're friends with a lot of Gargants. When you don't care about the Gargants, yeah, we just trashed them. So I guess that's how it goes. During the Age of Chaos, they talk about ogres going to Slaanesh, and I've already had to heard about the Gollops and the fertility festivals, but now they're talking about them putting hooks and rings into themselves, and I don't know, Slaanesh ogres just seem wrong. It's yucky, but the ogres they clean house when they find this stuff, though. Ogres don't tolerate that nonsense. You're going to go over and start worshiping some other gods, you done. So they purge that stuff when they find it. There is a great story about this guy named Balgo Maulhand, and he sees a bunch of stegodons eating, and he follows them. as they go through, and because the Stegodons are just sort of trashing, taking what they want. They're acting like ogres, and so he kind of follows them, and they get back to this Seraphon place, the fortress, whatever, and he lays it under siege because he sees that they got them penned, because they keep them and they've got them penned for when they need to use them. And you can't something that is such a true, obvious symbol of the gulping god, because once again they see it everywhere. You just see something eating, it's the gulping god. They're like holy representations of him, and he's taken it on as his holy mission to free all of these Stegodons from the Seraphon. There's just all sorts of dumb ogre stories like that in here, and it's super fun. It's super great, and I do really enjoy it. Now, is that the end? Yes. So I've gone through the notes. Let's talk a little bit about some of these characters. Because there's some fun, interesting facts here. First of all, the pictures for Morga. This model I want so bad. Power, certainty, and hunger. This is what you need to rise up among the Gutbusters. She is the pinnacle. She is both powerful, certain, and hungry. She has all three. A lot of over-tyrants like her father have one or two of these characteristics, and if they get too out of balance, you have a poor leader. Here, you've got a great leader in all of these things. One of Glob Glittermaw's innumerable spawn. She saw her father's complacency and contracts with the thinling races is how they've grown weak, and she used his name to get followers, because she did use her family status to get a following. But once she did, she starts to come to believe it's her destiny to save the Mawtribes from this decadence of her father. She fights Glob. She beats him. She recognized that being the supposed chosen of a god has its perks, because they did name her the chosen one. She is as unspiritual as they come, seeking only to feast and conquer, but she'll let the priest ramble as long as it proves useful. Here's a little quote from her. Red and his lot can rant about the realms getting swallowed up or whatever until the sky cracks open, so long as they turn up when I says so and smashes them thinlings on the left flank. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem. That's great. They've got songs to Morga the Mighty. They've got songs, and there's verses and choruses, and it's fantastic. And I'm not a singer, so I can't do it. But if I was clever, I would turn this into a song. Glob, his Glob's greatest strength wasn't his toughness. There's a lot of tough ogres. He knew what people wanted. He knew how to give people what they wanted and then get what he wanted in return. And his daughter is no different. It has helped her bring many clans into line. And she thinks nothing of using her children in the way she is, sending them out there, having them be, go into other places, make these treaties, be a part of it. And if needs be, take it over. She needs nothing but her bare hands to rip apart her rivals. But for the sake of appearances, she bears the meat fist masher. That's the big weapon. Wielded by the first over-tyrant, Grawl, the masher is a legendary weapon. Each day it is bathed in gore by butchers, wrapped in entrails to stoke its hunger. And to Morga, it's just a hammer, but that's just fine if they want to make a big deal out of it. The extent to her non-religious nature among all of these fanatics is fantastic. They have Kragnos, and we know who Kragnos is. Skip it. Grell Firefist. Grell is one of the most infamous man-eaters that still do... Now, a lot of people don't appreciate mercenary work. Couldn't care less, right? He refuses to abandon his warrior vagabond lifestyle. There are those... Yeah. The smallest of her sire's whelps, it's a female, Grell's grit and knack for striking deals saw her defy the expected grisly fate. She battled alongside Morga's expeditions in her youth. She's worked for Talia Vedra, whose blunt manner makes her one of the few thinlings Grell actually likes. Yet she always cuts her own kind the best deals. She gets Fire Fist because she loves black powder. She has a huge cannon she carries with her that blew her hand off. She's walking around with only one hand, but it doesn't matter. She'll still fight. She loves it. That's Grell Fire Fist. They talk about tyrants on glut horns. They do talk about the glut horns. They talk about how the gluttons, they don't call themselves that. We talked about that. When an ogre has acquired respect, bulk, and a reputation for intestinal fortitude, their tyrant might make them an iron gut, and they get the best weapons and the best armor. They're cool. Maul Beast Cav. Interesting things here. They talk about the different beasts and how they use them, right? I'm trying to find the page where I read this because it was actually really interesting. But they talk about they're very practical with their beasts. But they mention because as many of you know, what were those? The old things they used to ride, the Beast Claw Raiders. They used to ride the beasts. Those models is gonzo, right? They've been replaced with Maul beasts, but they're still mentioned in here because the Rhinox still pull the iron blasters and the scrap launcher, right? And they talk about that. They talk about how the Rhinoxen and the other things, the other creatures that they ride, they're all still here. But the Maul Beast is the biggest and sort of the most ornery and the best in battle type of stuff, which is, I mean, that's fine. It is what it is. They're bringing these creatures out. Morga rides one. She rides a Maul Beast. Her Maul Beast's got a name. I forget what its name is, but her kids really don't like her because she... At the end of the battle, she gives the first scraps after she gets to eat to her mount, and not to her own kids. I just think that's really hysterical. I really do. I find that really funny. You know, they got the Iron Blast and a scrap launcher in here still, but like I said, those are pulled by Rhinox. You know, the Stone Horns and the beast, all that stuff is still here. The Thunder Tusk. I'm just trying to look. The Hunters, interesting. Maul Beast Raiders. Here it is. They talk about the different... There are many hardy beasts of burden that serves purpose. Okay, so Rhinoxen, Mournfangs, Gatarks, and various other brutes are used to carry supplies that the Beast Claws deem it useful to hang on to from raid to raid. Maul Beasts present a clear challenge as they're likely to take a bite out of these creatures. So Maul Beasts are just the bigger and more ornery ones. So the other ones, they've sort of fallen to the wayside. They're not used as much anymore. But I like that they at least acknowledge that these were all pack beasts, all things that we used to pull things and use things. But now we're using Maul Beasts. And that's fine. It is what it is. Red the Maw. Let's get Red's story in here too. Claiming to be a prophet may not seem that interesting, but Red the Maw, he was Red the Cleaver, and he was a critic of Glob Gittermaw. We talked about all that. Across deadly oceans, he sailed to the forbidden isle of Kos, K-O-S. This is when he went into, a wintry land of ogre sea raiders. The Kosargi were famed for fighting under the infamous vampire warlord Radakar, so we're tying into those guys. Fewer knew of their ancient cave scrolls that spoke of a time when a bottomless mouth would open anew to swallow reality. To swallow reality, thought, and time. Many younger Kosargi saw this as the shyish nadir. Their elders, though, kept their old strange ways and guarded those ancient rime-ridden henges dubbed the Gates of Kos. Through these, Red dared to pass, drawn by impulses he couldn't explain or deny. So when he comes back from this chthonic odyssey, his mind was broken. In gibbering rants, he swore he had glimpsed the gulping god, not the limited god of green that the other conflagrated with the ogre deity, but visions or echoes of a cosmic force still yearning to swallow creation. His claims are supported by the vast cauldron he dragged back and still traveled. So he brought a cauldron back with him from this place. And he saw chthonic, some cosmic horror that wants to devour the whole universe. That's what he's come back from. When he uses this cauldron to power his gut magic, he unshackles something primitive and feral buried inside ogre hearts, a hunger so primal it causes even orcs who witnesses to think twice. And so did he induct the first Moss Seekers. He came out, and anyone who wanted to follow him, the Moss Seekers started following him as they worshipped. And some of them have gone kind of feral, and they only listen to the butchers. But yeah, so he's their big religious nut now. We've got the Gulping God's faithful, the Cleavers, and the Gut Seekers. Most Moss Seekers are not shaman, no matter how much they claim to see miracles in their belches and their gruel. Yet some are genuinely touched. And so you got some of these other guys out there. And once again, these models, just the Moss Seeker models, they're so fat. And it just like lops over their plates and stuff like that. It's crazy. But that's pretty much the lore. That's everything. I think that's everything I got. How do these guys go to their play style? I mean, I haven't gotten to play them yet. I just got them built, as I showed you in the beginning of the episode. But I mean, everything's about getting forward and smashing and eating. So far, they all seem to follow the lore pretty well. We'll see how things go from here. And we'll keep you updated as we see, as we get some games in and things like that. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this here lore segment. And time to wrap it up, I guess. I want to thank all of our sponsors and ask you to please follow the links either in the description on YouTube or in the show notes that we have at the links in the show notes to our sponsors, which includes Chaos Orc Superstore, 6 Squared Studios, Grognards, and Element Games. We also want to re-thank our Patreon patrons. That includes our executive producers, Kyle Leaf, Ricky Sean, and our associate producer, Big Jake. Everyone who's joined, we've had a lot of people joining. We've had a lot of people having to go, and a lot of financial reasons, whatever. I don't care about any of that. I just want to thank you for whether you have been, currently are, or are considering being a Patreon patron for this show. You're why I've got this setup going. As much as it's bubblegum and duct tape, I'm gonna. Every episode, I'm learning what I need to do more. In fact, before we did, I just ordered one more piece of small equipment that I need that'll be here tomorrow, and hopefully that'll help me to expand this and make this work even better. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back soon with more coverage. I hope you've enjoyed this lore coverage of the ogres and sort of their connections. The fact that it is all these ties with Gorka Morka, and when they talk about doing things that tie in with orc lore, I just love that they look at the orcs as they're the dim-witted ones, and they're a little bit pompous with their little proper crumpin' nonsense. But hey, we all know some things need a proper crumpin'. All right? So, folks, I'm going to wrap this up, and until next time, only the faithful will be triumphant, only the faithful will stand when all others fall, and only the faithful will know no despair except in failure. Oh, and they got the 4 Sigma. Boy, boy, boy.